All right, good morning, councillors. If we could please stand for the prayer. Almighty God, we have a responsibility to look after your creation, especially this region we call Barcaldine Regional Council. We are conscious that our decisions are going to affect deeply the people we have come here to serve. Assist us to exercise respect for councillors, staff and for the people of our region. Help us in this meeting to act wisely, justly and intelligently in all our deliberations. Thank you, Lord, for the privilege of both leading and serving. Assist us to do these well. Amen. Thank you. No apologies, we're all present and accounted. Take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and their elders, both past, present and emerging. Call now for declarations of prescribed conflict of interest in either of the two agenda items. Councillor Rogers.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Plum.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Arthur.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hanson.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gleeson.
No.
Councillor Peoples.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Does any councillor present believe any other councillor present may have overlooked a prescribed conflict of interest? Call now for declarable conflicts of interest. Councillor Peoples.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gleeson.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hanson.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Arthur.
No, Mr. Mayor.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rogers. Does any councillor present believe any other councillor may have overlooked a declarable conflict of interest? Hearing none, we go to agenda item 1.1. Right, so virtually, as is in the report, but will obviously form part of the minutes and the record of this meeting, the option to purchase all or part of what is currently described as Lot 3 SP 136834 in the community of Barcaldine is currently an option in a contract between Sunshot or Zen Industries and the owners of that parcel of land. Council's previous position and negotiations were that a legal entity would be formed to acquire that land via a financial contribution from council to the value of $1 million, and as per resolution 161 in May 2022, we indicated that that had to be subject to the necessary approvals and a funding commitment from other levels. Our conversations as a council with our legal representatives and also with representatives of the state and with representatives of Sunshot have indicated that with that parcel of land still being available within that contract, that I hesitate to say it, that the simplest method forward and would be for council to acquire that land and then manage the disbursement or further subdivision as is required by businesses once a commitment's made to the BRES, may be a far simpler and more straightforward process that requires less regulatory approach or less oversight and overburden from another entity. So I think we probably step back and go to questions. I probably should state at the outset that the agreement between Sunshot/Zen is due to expire on the 28th of this month. Council probably, in terms of certainty for the project, would be in a better place if we did acquire today. However, it's one of the questions in the briefing session prior to this, the risk probably predominantly in terms of an expedient decision would only rest with if the decision wasn't made by the expiration of the current agreement, then there'd be no certainty around what that renewed agreement might look like post 28th, given that there isn't, and that agreement has been extended twice, my advice from Sunshot, because of the time it took to secure the state's funding. I think we're probably better off going to questions from councillors.
Through you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Robertson.
If the current agreement is between the landholders and the Sunshine Industries, does that allow us to buy that parcel of land at the same?
Good question. What the chairman of that company is going to do today is assign to us that right.
Also, we've budgeted $1 million for the JV, so this $880,000, is that going to come out of that part of the budget?
Yes. And the extra figure that I can anticipate someone asking is the stamp duty figure. That will be $36,000. The estimated stamp duty as of today is $36,585. Obviously GST is 10%, but it's refundable claim. Yes, Councillor, please.
Mr Mayor, on smaller blocks of, is it on smaller blocks of dirt that there's GST involved? If a house block in town or a pastoral property, there's no GST on pastoral property. So why is there GST on that?
There is on some pastoral properties. It's where it's not a principal primary residence, so a town house block, residential land doesn't attract it. That's King and Co.'s advice as well, not mine.
Okay, it's all right, house.
Through you, Mr Mayor, so the 162 hectares, is that the whole thing? That's lot one?
Correct.
Yeah.
And lot one is just our language. It may be variously described once the plan is sealed with the department as an entirely different, because it will be resurveyed. It's just so that you can have an understanding in a visual representation that the current parcel of land, which is holistically known as Lot 3 SP, as I said at the outset, 136834, the portion that has been surveyed and a development application has been submitted for is identified for you on that plan as Lot 1, but that may, when sealed and registered with the department, attract a whole different numbering system. So we're not suggesting that it will be known as Lot 1 SP 4381, it's just that we could have said parcel 1, perhaps may have been a less slightly misleading phrase.
I would say, Mr Mayor, it will, because there is a Lot 1 SP lower to that.
That's right, yeah.
There's
So,
also
parcel 1 of lot, the proposed purchase area is the northwestern corner, which is 162 hectares, and in your documentation it has been variously described as Lot 1 in there, but it will be a whole new lot by its legal type. Once it's surveyed off. Once that's registered and sealed.
So who pays those costs?
The surveying costs would be paid by the owner, and the DA is by us. Because we're managing that process anyway.
Roughly cost?
Say again?
Roughly cost?
5,000? I think that was the exact quote actually, it was 5,000.
Thank you.
I believe the surveying's happened and the planners are working through. So the advice from Greg Overton is it would be considered a minor amendment and wouldn't require council approval. Because there's already a preliminary approval to separate that lot, councillors. Part of the MCU and the preliminary DA you approved a few months ago was the separation of what is on your map as Lot 1 and 2. That's the whole Brez site. So that's approved as a subdivision from the northern half that was surveyed and is approved. It's considered a minor amendment because it's just a further subdivision outside the minimum subdivision requirements, which I think in Buckhalden, the old Buckhalden Shire Council planning scheme, once it was a much smaller amount. I'm not going to quote myself now because I'm tied up in the new one too much, but it was a much smaller area than was the case in either Aramac or Jericho.
Mr Mayor, can I just touch on again the joint venture now would be an advisory body of council, and you would,
And the state.
and the state, yeah. But you would see that, and this would be our preference, that the infrastructure and all of the works that need to be done would be handled by us as a council.
Where we have the skill or capacity to do so. If there was a specialist skill that was required, or specialist infrastructure, perhaps something around electricity that may be outside of our ability to either project manage or deliver, then that may be managed by others. But predominantly, the position that we've taken in furthering the negotiations with both Sunshot and the department is entering into an arrangement where there could be a direct fund arrangement through a principal contractor arrangement between the state and council.
Yep.
So that we de-risk the payment methodology, where if council was to be doing that work all the time but had a legal entity that they didn't control, and nor did the state, and between us and the funding body, which is the state, there's always the risk as King & Co advisors of a falling out between the parties and an agreement that something wasn't done to scope. If payment is then withheld by the joint venture, then council would be potentially exposed to significant financial risk. Whereas if we've got a direct funding agreement with the state, with the milestones and the scope of works agreed to, the preferred position is that would be derived from the discussions with the JV. So the board of advisors would come up with the map of what's required and where it's required and how much and the volume and the method of interaction between the businesses and so forth. Then that's presented to the state and council for funding agreement. Now, I must be very transparent that those negotiations about getting that structure right is still very much in its infancy, but high-level state development department officers are involved in that, as well as representatives of Zen and council and the political arm of the state government as well.
But it would be your intention that us as a council would handle the state funding and try and manage that through council.
In the same method that we deliver RMPC contracts,
Yeah.
essentially. I think I may have mentioned that at one previous meeting, that essentially I see this as the delivery of a specialist road construction piece.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Now, that's at no attempt to marginalise or sideline the investment arm of Sunshot or Zen in any way. In fact, it's been done in consultation with them because we want to minimise duplication of acquittals. If we're acquitting to the JV and then the JV is acquitting to the state, there's a whole host of accountants and people that need to be involved there that don't actually help deliver on the grant. If there's one acquittal step, not two, it would be much simpler. Now, I should state at the outset that the inverse could also occur, where the JV is required to stand up and council may not, thank you, Debbie, council may not directly deliver any of this. It may be simpler for them to engage entirely private sector contractors and deliver the JV scope of works if that's what's required. And then once again to council, there's no risk either, because we're not doing work that we potentially may not be paid for. That's an issue for the private contractor to negotiate directly with the JV should that stand up. They're the two most likely scenarios. From a de-risk perspective, I'll let you think on that, Councillor Gleeson.
Mr. Mayor, the gas easement, can I ask you, or maybe Councillor Hanson may be able to answer, how wide is the easement on one, and what infrastructure and what can be built over and above?
No infrastructure, but you can answer the question of the easement.
20 metre easement and nothing built within that 20 metres.
Yeah.
How does that fit in with potential subdivision? So there's no road, you cannot run a road down along an easement?
Yeah, roads are fine.
You can put roads there.
You can put roads, but can you put bitumen roads and curb and channeling?
You can, through Mr. Mayor, but if ever there's a fault under that road, we will dig it up and then it'll be up to the grade to replace it.
If you recall the DA for this, there wasn't even pitched to be a road crossing it. There'd be roadies, the business for the northwest corner would access off the the side street. And the main entrance to the Bres is east of the gas pipeline. So that gas pipeline's drawn on all of the drawings for Bres businesses. It's always been taken into account as being there. They did toy with the idea of starting the Bres at the gas pipeline, and if it had have run pure north-south, I would suggest that that may have happened. But the fact that it runs away tangentially to east of south meant that would have left the owner with an extremely untidy strip running right the way through.
Thank you.
Really, Mr. Mayor, the agreement or the motion that we had about the joint venture and the $1 million, do we, if we buy this land for 880,000, what happens in the future? I mean, in the future, is there any risk of us having to still pay up the 1 million if a joint venture has to go ahead? Do we need to rescind that motion and somehow change it because we've already the 880,000 in towards that? Like, is there a risk of them saying, like, because we've got that agreement there, that we still really need to honour that agreement?
I've got my personal thoughts on it, but I'll go to Shane first.
No, because your resolution was up to $1 million and the subsequent discussion was around the purchase of the land, so it was, the whole joint venture was specifically about the land.
Specifically?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the resolution mentioned, the previous resolution mentioned here is form a company with Sunshine Energy with each party having equal shareholding. So I would say we would have to rescind that motion, or are we still forming a company?
The company could still eventuate.
I couldn't at this stage say that the company's not required, so I'd be hesitant to rescind it, but there's still a manner of steps, just because council is resolved at that level. There's still a number of steps that have to be undertaken before that can happen anyway, such as legally entering it. And the number one thing is seeking the Treasurer's approval, which we haven't done yet.
Well, I was going to say that's part B, seek approval.
That's right, which hasn't happened. We can't, because we haven't got a structure to ask the reason we haven't asked is there's been informal discussions between myself and the Treasurer and his Chief of Staff, but until we actually have a constitution for what the JV looks like, the Treasurer can't approve something that he doesn't know what it is.
But it's a good point.
So
We're not committed to $1 million for the JV and also 880,000 for the land. It's something that it needs to be very clear.
Councillor.
now, back to that previous resolution, part B is seek ministerial approval to invest in the Barcaldine Renewable Energy Zone Trust. So
The
if we
trust
have,
was going to buy the land.
yeah, but
That was what
if,
my advice
if the
was.
trust is now not going forward, when we seek approval, that will have to change to whatever entity.
If we seek approval.
Yeah.
If we seek, it may not even be required. And then in that case, then the motion would be rescinded because it wouldn't hit it, or
Yeah.
like most other motions, it would just lapse for want of lack of activity. No local governments are very good at going back and rescinding old motions. I mean, if you trawled through the 15 years of resolutions at this council, perhaps even 3 years of resolutions,
I've been
you'd find
being
things
for the
good.
last 6 months, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
But it's the options on the table to do that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the consultation you said was between Zen, CEO, yourself, and also legal advice.
King and Co, yes.
Yeah, that might need to just be added to this. It's not, it's just saying that you and CEO and Zen consultation.
Yep.
You might need to add that to it.
Mr. Mayor, give me time to think on it. My question earlier about sort of mainly project management being council or the JV, and you left it a bit open that it could be both, or one or the other. But would you see that our preferred preference is going to be council?
Yes, definitely. That's the preferred position of all parties involved,
Yes.
including the officer level department officials' advice to me.
Okay.
And I'm conscious that we're in open records, open meetings, so I'm not going to name them, but I mean in numerous meetings now, like this has been, I would suggest 90% of my time as in the last 3 weeks has been trying to get to some resolution about this so that I can pitch something to you. Like we gave a detailed briefing around where we're at with respect to the JV, but once other elements of that started to look a little unclear, we've been working feverishly to make sure we don't jeopardise the $7 million in funding for a start. That's the number one thing.
Yeah.
What are we going to do to maintain that? And it's, well, sorry, number one was make sure that the proponents are still happy that we keep going in this direction. And it all got started by proponents saying to the people around Sunshot, what possibility exists for us to purchase our own land? The whole model was built on leasing, but now as they're getting close to finance, they're asking, well, can we have tenure? And then that's changed the thinking about how this would proceed. As well as still waiting to see from the state what their funding arrangement looks like. As in how we would practically deliver, what's the best vehicle for the delivery of the $7 million to get as much of it onto the ground as possible, as opposed to losing it in administration.
Yeah, well, yep, I'm very much in favour, and you seem to be the same, Mr Mayor, that, you know, we do that sort of thing all the time, and I'd like to see that we do it here too.
Councillor, I just want to pause the meeting. I think there's two different resolutions here, and I really am not in the slightest bit concerned about Resolution 161. There's no mention of $1 in Resolution 161. If you know, there's no funding commitment there at all. There was an earlier resolution, Debbie, where we, and it would have been nearly 12 months before that, where we indicated that we would approve the contribution of $1 million, and it had conditions attached to it. That resolution was with respect to the trustee, councillors. Sorry, now this, I just had a look as well because I was worried about rescinding something. Under no circumstances would I advise rescinding Resolution 161 because that still quite possibly may need to happen for the delivery of the funding or some other reason, the administration of something else. But that doesn't tie us to $1 in financial contributions, but there is another resolution that does. So I'll just, if you bear with me. Now, I suppose you've been previously looking for it, Councillor Arthur, have you?
No,
Because I can't,
I've got a resolution summary, but there's holes in that thing.
I'll get you the date. I'll have a look because I texted the Premier the date. Yeah, so the December meeting in 2021, so just stand by. Or if you want to have a look on your own devices. So the resolution 394 reads that Council receives the report and that Council invests $1 million in the Barcaldine Renewable Energy Zone joint venture on the condition that A, the project receives the Queensland State Government's approval for the amount of funding requested, which has been passed, by the way. B, other necessary approvals being in place. And C, legal business structures will need to reflect Barcaldine Regional Council as the preferential shareholder with first call on returning its initial investment. and D, any additional government grants being approved for initial capital development that is considered essential. So that's the only one that references council's initial $1 million. There's definitely no doubt that C is not yet in effect. So until such point as C occurred, there'd be nothing tying us to that. And if we were the owner of the land, then the joint venture structure would recognise that. If the joint venture stood up as a manager of council land, it would be purely stood up to manage an asset that we own. The same as we manage the Department of Transport's assets through the state-controlled roads in our patch under an RMPC contract. I keep coming back to that one, but it's the simplest way to describe how you can be contractually required to obligate to manage someone else's affairs or deliver an asset on their behalf. Now, you don't deliver capital upgrades under an RMPC contract, but there's still synergy there. So, council couldn't be at liberty to rescind the motion and replace it with a motion that council's investment in the Barcaldine Renewable Energy Zone proceed through the direct purchase of the land, which is exactly what the $1 million was for anyway. So you could amend that. I think just simply rescinding it could send a really bad message that you don't want to invest $1 million in the Bres anymore. I think all you're talking about rescinding it is to ensure that we're not tied to another financial contribution down the track. But I think in wording the rescind motion, you would need to word a replacement motion almost instantaneously to ensure that
Commitment
the public signalling of the council, should you be of such a mind,
Mr. Mayor, if we were to go ahead to purchase this land and the Breeze for some reason didn't go ahead, it can be subdivided and sold or leased or whatever in any form. Is it in a rural area or is it in a residential area? Rural. Other part of that question, the surveying costs are going to be covered by the owner?
correct.
Has it got to be fenced at any stage at this point in time, or if the Breeze goes ahead, well, individual blocks will be sold and subdivided and sold to whoever?
So the funding commitment from the state includes an allocation for fencing, both internal and external. The $7 million has contributions for fencing, roads. I think the initial concept was for a 6-foot dog fence around the entirety of the lot. And then further security fencing as determined by the requirements of individual tenants. Some won't require any fencing at all. Others will require, for example, the hydrogen and urea will need 12-foot chain mesh fences with, but a lot of the internal fencing will be the obligation of the individual tenants. Councillors, I just want to, I won't name the individual councillor who asked a question for fear of embarrassing them, but if they want to put their name to it in a moment, I'm more than happy. The point that struck with me in the preliminary briefing session to this meeting was the fact that this is a rushed decision, a la some other very important public infrastructure in this community, such as the rec park, which then left a council considerable amount of heartache and financial work to be undertaken to ensure that, and even indeed infrastructure adjustment to ensure that was remedied. And I hadn't considered that, and I've been considering that whilst I've been talking to you for the last 45 minutes. If you are as a collective uncertain about the reason for the timing and the perception of this being expedited, or be blunt, rushed, is because of as I stated at the outset, the expiration of an existing agreement. We could always hold back and negotiate that separately if that is of your want. But also, I guess when the senior executive and the mayor have been working on something feverishly for some time, and I did certainly give you a detailed briefing about the JV, but then we've moved in another direction in the last 6 weeks. It does potentially feel like we've been charging in one direction for a long time, but a lot of this is extremely different, if not new. It's very different to what you were expecting as a council at our last detailed briefing on this. Under no circumstances do I want councillors to feel that they are rushing an investment decision that's dealing with over $900,000 worth of ratepayers' money. I am very personally comfortable with the due diligence that's gone into this, and in some ways, I've said, I think this strategy, as is put to you today, substantially de-risks council's financial commitment. But I've sat where you sat and seen things rushed, and then sat where I sit now and have to clean up that mess. So I really think that this needs to be a decision that you're confident taking either in favour of or against, knowing that you've got the questions answered that you would ask, and that you probably aren't going to think of a question tomorrow that you wanted to ask before you made the decision. I can defer the outcome of this meeting for a number of days if you still would like the decision to be made prior to the 28th, or indeed I can effectively defer it forever. But by the same token, we do have some other commitments in terms of infrastructure delivery that require us to do somewhere on a parcel of land. The due diligence that's been undertaken by the expert company involved has identified this as the most suitable from a holistic perspective. And to the part of that due diligence that company undertook was an audit of council-owned land or government-owned land, and this still appeared as at the top of the list. So I'm very cognizant of the pressure that you now may be individually facing around the importance of this decision versus your responsibility to guard the community's financial assets.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to say that I'm the one that feels that it's rushed, because we only got the agenda after 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and then in the briefing session there's been pertinent information that has changed, as you said, the direction of whether it be the joint venture or... And I'm not comfortable making a decision in that little amount of time. Whether it be tomorrow or next week, I'm not against the proposal, I'm just not comfortable in saying yes. And yeah, I do feel it may not be rushed from your side, but from the information to us, within, 16 hours, 17 hours, we've got this, had a bit of a change of direction in the last 2 hours, and then need to be comfortable to, and I know we've already put our hand up to spend upwards of $1 million for it, but like I think there's been an extra layer of risk brought into it, and then there's been, I think, possibly some modelling on whether it's the individual businesses and that, because a lot of the viability and the BRES is that interconnected that my understanding is that it's not all or nothing, but there's some smaller businesses there that can probably still do what they need to do, but...
And there's one really large business that doesn't rely on any other input either.
But the majority of those smaller ones are somewhat connected. And like I said, I'm not comfortable with being able to make a reasonable decision, given the time frame that we've been given the information. Not that should affect anyone else.
No, but I'm pleased that you raise the point because I think it's in considering your thoughts, I think it's very relevant. So in that light, councillors, where are you all at?
Mr Mayor, I do agree with Councillor Arthur to a degree. And we go back to the ski park, I was one who voted against the ski park at the time for the simple reason I didn't think we'd done our homework. This one is a fair bit different from me in that there is so much opportunity with this one, especially with employment and, what could happen with this could just change everything, not just Park Auckland, for our whole area, to be honest. I think it's great. My only concern, my major concern, is now that we're buying the land and the JV's not going to take up, will not require the $1 million, it's just us buying the land. I would like some certainty around us being the project manager. That's probably the one sticking point for me at the moment. And I know you can't give us that today, but that's something that you've given would be your intention to chase.
Well, I've been already chasing.
Yeah.
But we could be some months away from that clarity.
So for what I'm chasing and what I need as us as project manager with our joint venture being an advisory body or something to us, we're not going to get for some time anyway. So
we could have it as soon as 4 o'clock this afternoon and hook up there, but I just, those things take time and there's still some cabinet level decisions that may need to be made, and the cabinet process takes as long as it takes. We saw it take us 18 months in this instance to even get the $7 million commitment from them. So the minutiae of who receives that, or how they receive that, or how the work that's funding is delivered, is the time frame around that's still not clear. We haven't even seen it, neither party has seen a draft funding arrangement at this stage.
well, that's probably a concern too.
It probably just reflects that this project is not a normal government grant that's operating and it's being funded out of a program such as Building Our Regions, or where there's an established mechanism for the release of money and a process that's being developed department-wide. This has got to be built from the ground up.
So, Mr Mayor, along the lines of what Councillor Arthur has put forward, do you see any problems for the future of this project if we do delay?
If we do delay.
Yeah.
Yes and no, if I may, with the risk of being caught in a barbed wire fence. The lack of immediate certainty to outside investors, a la the businesses within the BREZ, around its future, because till now it's been locked and loaded, and then if we were to delay, then they may get some nervous moments around is their true commitment to the BREZ. In terms of probably all of the questions around the risks, is how long is the intended delay before an investment decision from us is made. I guess in thinking about that and going back to Councillor Arthur, the resolution actually says to enter into negotiations to purchase part of Lot 3. I wonder if we just word that and beef that wording up, that the final for the CEO to present to council a contract for sale for approval at our meeting on the 26th, which gives you 2 weeks to further consider, to receive things like the vegetation management report, the diligences that have been undertaken, the advice from King & Co. It means that we don't leave here today signalling our lack of support for the project. But what we also don't have is the point that the Deputy Mayor raised, and I'm quite certain that the Chairman of Zen will forward that today, but he still has to release to us anyway the right to do that, or assign to us the right to do that. So I just wonder if, in terms of allowing you time to undertake your further due diligence as councillors with more information that will come out of the ordinary negotiations to buy a block of land anyway, like there's going to be contractual expectations, including the sealing of the plan, like as is referenced, isn't it, in the report?
Subject to.
Okay, subject to all approvals being in place. Well, those approvals were an approved DA, a subdivision that had been sealed and the plans lodged and sealed with the department. So we could probably, and on top of that there may have been others. So I wonder if our intent here today, if you see fit to like for the CEO to now be involved, our CEO to now be involved in, or to take control of the negotiations to purchase, and then we seek a final investment decision when we have a draft approved contract for sale. And the supporting material that comes with that. That would then not necessarily signal anything other than just as government going through its government process.
And Mr Mayor, I'd be comfortable with that. The other thing too, I'd just say, and I speak on my behalf here too, but I speak, I think, on behalf of all councillors. We're still all very, very positive about this project. I'm sure that's a collective in the room. I'm sure that anyone out there that wants to know how we feel, we're still totally supportive of this, and we just have got a little bit to think about and how it all comes together, that's all.
The irony is not lost on me that we could have stood the joint venture up and given them the $1 million and the land be purchased, and yet then we get to this situation. But I get that the irony is this is different. We were at that stage funding a different model, Councillor Arthur, with different layers of complexity. I actually think that layer was probably more complex, but there's still other complexities that now arise as a result of the changed dynamic. By the 26th, we potentially may see some movement around a draft funding arrangement, which may ease your concerns, Councillor Peebles. So I'm cognizant of respecting councillors' right to take the time, and as I wouldn't have paused the meeting and gone in this direction without having given that consideration. But I'm also cognizant about sending a clear message to investors that we support this concept, and we just need to, because of the changed dynamic around land ownership, take some time to ensure that that's the right step.
Yep.
Councillor Arthur, is that, I know you said maybe not next week or next week or...
No, that's what I mean, like tomorrow, even 24 hours to digest it. I may have, and as I said, I'm not against the resolution, but I just haven't had enough time, and especially with our little change in tact this morning, to be able to confidently digest it all and be happy enough. But I'm considerably more happy. That's bad English. I'm happy with that resolution, and if it comes back at the end of the month. And I'm aware of the timing pressures around it. And the signals it can send if...
Just on the time there, Councillor, and I used time in my opening comments as a reason for this to be considered. But I should state that extreme good faith has been shown to this deal by the tenants of the land in their dealings with Sunshot, and as recently as last week in their private conversations with the CEO. So I'm not anticipating problems, but I thought, in terms of we have to be very cognizant that the legal document does have an end date, and that is this month. And I have been pushing on Council's behalf to get this matter resolved as promptly as possible, but unfortunately local government works almost as slow as the state and federal governments in terms of getting our outcomes, and that wasn't an internal thing, it's just the disconnect between a private public business. So, Councillor Peebles and Arthurs have had a fair bit to say about this. That's a bit to say. Councillor Rogers, where are you at with the slight change here in this process?
I'm comfortable with the change, Mr Mayor. I'm just wondering if the motion up there needs to have, did you say a draft contract needs to be written in there somewhere?
Yeah, we perhaps could take the final report bit out and go with the supporting materials and investment decision. And the supporting materials will be legal advice from King & Co as well as perhaps the draft contract. Especially if both parties have had an in-principle agreement to that draft contract, that would be a really good sign.
Yes, and I'm really in support of it like everyone else, and I think there has been so much investigation into it over these previous years, but I'm comfortable with the way it's going. So I do agree that like it has been rushed, but I understand like that these things just happen like.
I can't apologise more
Yeah.
for putting councillors in a position that they feel rushed into a decision. In fact, you've seen our style in operation. Sometimes we take too long to arrive at a decision in the boardroom. But I'd much sooner be accused of letting things drag out than rushing any councillor or staff member into providing advice or a decision that they may not feel comfortable with. I'm very, very upset that I've done that to you, councillor.
Mr Mayor, can I move into closed session for a bit, please?
Yeah, but before we do, I just want to go around the room on this resolution first. Councillor Plum, are you comfortable with the
Yeah, I'm
proposed
comfortable.
amendment?
I'm comfortable with this amendment to this resolution, and I really think that as I said, some more information has come to light to us today in this discussion, and I like the fact that we're actually purchasing the land and we own the land, so that we have the rights then to put our mark on it, so it can go where we want it to go, or where we want it to be. And I think we need to see that supporting material so we can satisfy our minds that we're going in the right direction.
I was just looking at one document right here, councillor, to support what you're saying. It's the vegetation management, vegetation report that is generated. And it shows nothing, right? Absolutely nothing. But at least you've got the comfort from showing that there is nothing of concern. You know what I mean? Like when you said it's come from King & Co, that it's a supporting material, that actually it's not going to be a gotcha moment, but once again, it completes the suite of information. And that actually only came overnight. I hadn't even seen that yesterday. So there's so much still unfolding as we engage our legal support to protect the council, that information needs to be, even if it is confidential, shared confidentially with councillors to support your decision making. I'll skip over you, councillor, because unless you've got anything else to add.
No, I'd just like to say, I know there's been a bit of rigmarole for a little over an hour's meeting for the special meeting, but I think it's better that we've discussed it here and now as opposed to it potentially being in a normal meeting. And if it's 600 or 900 pages, we don't then get the time to afford enough time to everything. So, yeah.
Extremely important decision. There's not many times that this council would be sitting here to make a decision around an $880,000 expenditure that doesn't involve something that's funded by others, you know, in terms of a road contract. So very much important enough. Councillor Hanson?
Yeah, I'm actually in favour of going this way because under the old agreement, it was going to take council 5 to 10 years to get some sort of investment back from the $1 million, whereas I think this way we own the land, our return can be as soon as people start buying or leasing. I'm also in agreement of giving us more time and more information, but if it comes to the crunch, I will back the agreement today. If it comes to the crunch.
Thanks, councillor. Councillor, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If the 26th, the agreement expires on the 28th, the agreement with the landowners, so if we get everything organised, so everything's done on the 26th and we pass this motion officially on the 26th, that's still, I know it's 2 days, but still in the expiry time.
Yes, because if it wasn't, I would have moved that general meeting to make sure it was, councillor. Yeah. I mean, is settlement going to occur by the 28th? Probably not, because there's so many other processes. But a legally binding contract for sale could be entered into by the 28th, subject to the following conditions, and those conditions would be the things that I've already outlined and anything else that is uncovered in the CEO's negotiations.
Thank you.
And as I stated that also in saying that there's good faith. I mean, if we're showing the I nearly said that, we're showing the tenants we're serious about this, I don't envisage there being a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would have quite possibly have been in favour of today. I do appreciate what Councillor Arthur has brought up, and I appreciate the changes, slight changes, and I think that we all agree that it'll be really good for the industry, for the area. So thank you.
Councillor, I'm always happy to support going into closed session, but just on the basis of what? Sorry, I have to justify it.
I want to discuss a business matter of someone that we're dealing with, Mr. Mayor, if that's how I want to put it.
Someone could have picked another colour folder for my closed meetings book other than red. Like you open the red book, it looks terrible.
Is it JG, Mr. Mayor, or is that am I out of date?
Did you say G?
JG, yeah.
Contract negotiation.
Contract negotiations.
Okay, is that the letters?
Well, mine might be out of date.
Certainly, Chair.
Negotiations relating to a commercial matter involving the local government with public discussion may be likely to prejudice the interests of local government.
I'm happy with that.
Notwithstanding, we've checked the letters.
Yeah,
That
no.
part of the Act won't have changed. Is some, can I have somebody move that we place according to those provisions?
Yeah.
Councillor People, did you say G? Negotiations, yes it is.
254 JG,
Yeah, that's still accurate. 254J, Part 3, Section G. Close the meeting. Second up, Councillor Plum, those in favour?
Sorry, Graham.
Staff to leave as well, or
Staff to go too.
No, fine.
hang on. Right, Graham can return. Okay,
Move back to no.
so just if we can just word through that with the supporting materials and final investment decision, or just investment decision to be endorsed at the council meeting on 26th September. Are we comfortable line by line here, councillors, that we're
Mr. Can you have with all supporting material?
What's that?
with all the supporting materials? Yep.
All supporting material.
Dean or Shane, while the councillors are digesting that. What did you say, sorry?
Councillor Plum, I can't hear a word you're saying.
I just put all, with all the supporting material, so they're all.
If I can just let the councillors digest it for a moment. Shane or Dan, do you have any advice for council on this?
I'll make out that it's, determination around all,
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, I was
all
going to
available
suggest
material.
part of that supporting material, could we have some modelling on like the rents, rates, recovery, whether it's a per square metre?
What have we looked at for you there, which is what we've looked at, is the DA's got square meterage,
Yeah,
the
that's what
preliminary
we
DA. If we were to do an assumption that every tenant owned their own land versus no tenant owning their own land and it being one parcel, and then you can do your adjustments on the way through then.
Yeah, and then like based on the rates, like will we recover this over 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years? Like return on investment,
Yeah.
sort of thing, like for the, based on
All assumptions, but
there'll be a model of assumptions, but,
All right, Dan, you and I might have a look at this.
or something in that sort of vein, just to give us a bit of an idea, and then even if we get like 1 or 2 scenarios, we can fiddle with it ourselves.
And the likes of,
Councillor Plum, that's what you mean by all?
yeah, and the likes of now, the vegetation ones just come to light, you know, things like
Although there's
That's
nothing,
That's
it's
just
clear.
our due
It
diligence.
just tells you that there's no koala habitats, no coastal marine habitats. It's just a standard report that you do when you're buying a property to tell you whether there's any area of concern, and that's what I'm saying. It doesn't have any areas of concern, but at least you know that if you see this report. Anyone can get that if you log on to the Department of Resources, they'll give you that for free.
We just pulled the easement, if there was questions today, so.
It's
It's just that there's no impediments, all the work's been done.
It is a vegetation,
Yeah, but it's not an actual vegetation report on the site,
nothing to worry an industrial development.
just in case there was a bird or a lizard or something.
No platypus.
No
Mr. Mayor.
papers.
Well, I don't think it does a platypus report, but there certainly is a koala habitat report as part of it. That's part of the new state planning provisions now, and there's no areas of concern for that.
Definitely have to be a native title report.
Yeah, it's freehold, see, so it's a clear native title.
Well, all encumbrances, what we would expect, but up until now,
There has
it
been,
hasn't been.
there's a difference, councillor, between native title and cultural heritage. The cultural heritage report's been done for the development issue, but that's not related to the buying. So depending on the type of activities that are required there, the implication from a cultural heritage perspective as averse to the native title, they're connected but they're different. Because cultural heritage doesn't necessarily only deal with First Nations issues, it can deal with more recent. So Shane or Dan, any other advice?
No.
I know you're very new here, anything that you've seen?
No, I'm still learning the ins and outs of this actual project, so.
Very good. We'll give him a week, so it's not full brief on everything.
Jenny?
No.
Paula? No. Right. Are councillors comfortable to proceed to the vote? Do I have a motion? Moved, Councillor Arthur, second, Councillor Hanson. Any further debate? Those in favour? Motion carried 7-0. All right, this one's a formality. Debbie has done some very good diligence looking at our calendars and realised that with the meeting change this month, to so late in the month, the next one, to avoid LGAQ conference and a few other LGAQ matters that some or all of us will be attending, that it's precious little time between that one and the 10th of October meeting, I think it was, that we had. Yep. So the proposal is to push it back until the 31st. We may still have a briefing session in and around there to do some policy work because I'm seeing the drafts of some policy starting to come together. So, but in terms of we need to amend via resolution the general meeting dates. So the proposal is to push it back to the 31st of October, which will have essentially a month between those meetings. And then, once again, that would then mean a very short turnaround for the current 14th of November. So the proposal is to go back a week for that so that there'd be 3 clear weeks between general meetings, give us more accurate financial reporting. Now, I know the reason we're bringing it here in ARCSing is because you do set your diaries around the time you know you have to be here, and if you've already done that, then please let me know. So let's speak up now if that is the case, so we can abort mission. Anyone have a problem?
No, Mr. Mayor, I don't have a problem with the change of dates, but if we're changing the timings and that as well, can we start at 9 o'clock if it's not a big agenda?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Or, well, depending on whether you've got a feel of whether it'll.
Well, I can tell you now that the meeting for the 20, whatever it is, September, it will be an 8:30 start,
Yep.
and we may even order dinner that night. So, yeah, brace yourselves. It's going to be a very long meeting.
Coffee in the morning.
This
I'll have to get
month's
deliveries at lunch.
general meeting.
I'm busy putting all this support.
It won't be 600 pages, but there will be decisions that require considerable deliberation.
Yeah, like I said, on the
I would
time.
advise you to get your fleet documents out from the budget and do some homework. Planned fleet. Does anyone have a problem Cole, have you got a work incursion that's going to knock you around?
It actually probably suits me better than the 19th, so this month anyway.
Very good. Councillor Plum?
I'm all for just a minute. No, that suits me, Mr. Mayor.
Right. If that's the case, officers have not identified, it's possibly didn't get run past DMs. Have you got calendar issues? Is
I will be away, Mr. Mayor.
that a good thing or a bad thing for you, do you mean?
No, that's a bad thing for me, no, that's fine.
Yeah. Cheryl,
I believe I'll be fine, thank you.
Jenny,
I'm fine with that.
can somebody move then that those two meetings be amended as proposed? Move Councillor Henson, second Councillor Plum, those in favour. Motion carried. That brings us to the end of our meeting, the meeting time being 10:17 a.m.